Morning, morning, morning. Yes, we're back with another episode, another rider. Today we have a lovely lady all the way from down under, but actually she's an expat there, you could say, because she's born and bred in the English countryside. She's a lovely blonde, and her name is Jo, and she's going to tell us about life as a Brit in Australia. So nice to have you here today, Jo.
Thank you. Nice to be here and in your Uber.
Okay, so first of all, let's start at the beginning. What kind of person were you when you were in school?
Oh, so I was probably really shy when I was in school, actually. So I've got a twin sister, and she was always been really outgoing, talks a lot, a bit like me now, but I'd always hide behind her because I was, like I said, really shy. So I'd hide behind her, she'd do all the talking, and I'd just be sitting there really quietly. And I think when I got to maybe 16, 17, when I went to college, and I kind of came out of her shadow and found my voice. And just didn't probably stop talking since.
Okay.
Okay,
That's good. That's good. So, why did you move to Australia?
Okay, so I had a boyfriend when I was from 18 to 21, and as you do at that age, you kind of go through different scenarios where, I don't know, you're out and someone has an argument, and so we split up and break up, and we're kind of almost like the joke of the village where we come from, because we'd always be splitting up and getting back together, and eventually we kind of split up for good. He went travelling around the world, ended up in Australia, and then when I was around 33, he came back to the UK for a wedding, and we got back together, but obviously long distance. So 3 months after he'd come back, I decided to go with a few friends to Australia to see if I liked it, and then I got there, had nothing really much going on in the UK. He's like, well, do you want me to come back to the UK, or do you want to come and live here? And I was like, no, I'll come and live there. So I hadn't seen him for 16 years. And then 3 weeks after knowing him, I just decided to move to Australia.
Well, you had that history, that foundation.
Yeah, no, so we did, yeah. So it's not like he was some random that I didn't know. Yeah. I knew him.
And that showed you had a strong chemistry.
Well, exactly, yes.
What did your parents say when you moved in?
Do you know what? They were just really supportive. So because they were in the army, so they travelled around a lot, seen the world, and realised there was actually a lot more going on outside of our small little village than there was anywhere else. So they were really happy, and obviously, you know, they were of course going to miss me, but they understood that I needed to spread my wings.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were the culture shocks for you when you got to...
Well, I think the hardest thing was, when you come from a small village, and then I moved to the northern beaches, which is just kind of, you know, over the water basically from Sydney. It's when you're so used to everything, you know, the small little lanes you're going around, and then suddenly you go to this big city, you've got no idea where you are. I didn't have any friends there, and also there wasn't a lot of culture, as in you come to London and there's beautiful architecture, and you know, it's, you know, you've got the countryside, whereas it's a very different outlook with the beaches, which are obviously amazing in themselves anyway, but it was, you know, summer is boiling, it's boiling. Winter's probably my favourite time of year in Australia, actually, because it reminds me of a lot of England when it's nice and frosty and cold. It doesn't get frosty in Sydney, but blue skies and probably about 11 degrees. We all usually wear shorts and t-shirts. Even in winter, you wear shorts and t-shirts.
Okay.
So, because then you might just add a jumper to it, but...
Is it a dry heat?
No, so it's probably more it can be quite a sticky heat, depends on... But I think because we live by the beach, you get a bit of a cooler breeze.
Okay.
So, and I think I found, one of the things I found most is that, you know, they have this whole thing about, I don't know, there was much more of a class-based system than even in the UK, so in Australia. So they've got like new money and old money, and it's really, and everyone goes to private school there. Loads of kids go to private school, and the grandparents pay for them to go to private school. Whereas when I grew up in Hampshire, there's probably one or two of my friends went to private school, but if you're in Sydney, loads of them. There's a bit of a, I'm trying to think of the word.
How would you describe Australian culture? Is it a mix of, for what you're sounding, it's a mix of American meets British?
Yeah, it's actually probably more American than British.
Okay.
I would say. Yeah, definitely more American than British. But where we live is actually, there's a massive expat Brit community.
Did you find that obviously you went out there to meet your partner?
Yeah.
Was he there already in that community?
Yes, he was already in the community. Yeah.
Okay. Do you find, because it sounds like there's safety in numbers. You go to where you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
You don't try and integrate with the locals as such.
Oh no, I've got so yes, I agreed to that with that extent to begin with when I first worked there. But when I first went there, I was a waitress. I was too old to get a working visa, so I had to work cash in hand. So I worked for $10 an hour, but made loads of Australian friends because of the fact. But yes, my husband's group was mainly like English, whereas I've got a really quite extended group of Australian people because of the fact that when I first got there, I worked in the restaurant for about a year and a half. Probably best job I've ever done.
How did they take to you as a POM? I believe that's what
So they
call
can
us.
be, the older generation were probably a bit more, not wary, but just a bit more, they would call you a POM.
Well, what does a POM mean?
So
From my understanding, it's a reference for them, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yes, but they still call you a POM. So if someone used to come to me, oh, you're a POM then, almost like it was a derogatory term, but like, oh, you're a POM. And then I'd actually usually go back to them and go, well, actually, I'm not really a POM, am I? Because POM is obviously prisoner of Mother England. And they're prisoners of Mother England because obviously their ancestors were sent over there because they were prisoners. So I'm not a POM.
Criminals, yeah.
So often I'd come back to them, but they would almost like look down at you like, oh, you're a POM, are you? Okay, so that often I'd go back to them and just go, well, actually, no, I'm not a POM.
And what did they say to you when you said that to them?
They didn't really say anything. I think they were quite surprised I actually answered back.
Oh, is it?
Well, yeah, because they're quite, especially the older generation, they're quite sexist. So...
Oh, so they believe they can say or do anything and there's no repercussions?
Yeah, the older generation, not like the younger generation have definitely changed, so... But the older generation. But a lot of the old boys would come in and have their coffee in the morning in the restaurant and,
So they have their booth that they want to sit in every time?
Yeah. They don't even look at you. They'll just like grunt and expect you to know their order, which obviously I did. But yes. So yeah, but there is a large contingent of English people or people that Irish as well. Irish, so I've got lots of Irish friends. I've got lots of Australian friends. English, Canadian actually.
Okay. Was there anything that you found it really hard to get to grips with?
I don't think anything in particular, apart from the fact that it was more around missing home. So, and actually, probably I would have always said, so I've been there 18 years now, up till COVID hit, I would always say, I don't want to live here, I want to live in England.
Was it?
And then COVID hit, and I kind of realised how lucky I was to live where I live. So, and I think often you get on the whole, the mouse wheel, you just keep going round and round and don't actually enjoy where you are because you're so busy with work and got 2 children, so busy with the kids. But actually, COVID made me stop and kind of, spend time and reassess where we were. So I always thought I wanted to move back to England, but since COVID hit, it was almost like a bit of an epiphany that, oh my God, I live by the beach. I've got so much open space around me. We don't actually have to do anything or go anywhere. We don't even need any money to do anything because you can just go down the beach or, go snorkeling. We got paddle boards this summer. So we were out snorkeling on the paddle boards and just kind of, it's quite like refreshing and there's a lot more freedom. So we go down the beach on a Sunday afternoon, go and grab some sushi and just spend the evening down the beach till like 11 o'clock at night. It's like you're on holiday all the time. And sometimes we sit there and go, oh my God, we live here. But it's only that realisation, I think, since COVID hit about where we live. But the hardest thing was definitely being so far away from family and friends and old friends and things that are really familiar. Yeah.
What have you learnt that you wish you knew when you started when it comes to living and moving to Australia?
Don't sweat the small stuff, probably. As in, don't worry about things so much. Just go with the flow and don't wish you were somewhere else. Just make the most of where you're at that point. Don't wish you were somewhere else. And I reckon be more open to opportunities or, yeah.
Okay. What would be your advice to an English person who's going to move to Australia?
What would my advice be? Okay, so probably my first advice, just be think about where you want to live. Think about what you want out of your time in Australia. If you want to live by the beach, just, make sure you kind of do your homework as to the best places to live. Australia is incredibly expensive. Even rentals really expensive, especially anywhere near Sydney, because obviously you can get the ferry over from where I live over to Sydney and work from there. So you have to be really mindful about where you decide to move to and what you decide you want out of your time in Sydney. But also just go down the beach and spend the time and actually walk around and, and get your bearings and just get a job, because you get integrated into, even if it's just, like I said, when I first started, I was a waitress. I'm now an executive assistant for a banking company. But, go and do waitressing and meet the locals, and that's what I would say.
Okay, that's good. What does the future hold for you?
The future. Okay. So ideally, like I said, I've always had, my heart will probably always be in England, because I've grown up here and my family live here, and my oldest and dearest friends live here too. But when I retire, I'd like to spend 3 months in the UK, and then, or even just traveling around Europe as well, like just getting an old caravan or camper van and going to, Switzerland and Spain and just traveling in France and just traveling around, but also spending some time in the UK, and then the rest of the time in Australia, because I have kids and we probably live in Australia too. So I think that's the future.
Okay, that's Australia's tucked away. Do you ever feel isolated as a country?
So it's not as easy. So, for example, if you're in England, you can just get the Eurostar to France, or you can just quickly pop over to Spain for the weekend. You can't do that in England. In Australia. You can do that in England, not in Australia. But no, I don't feel like I feel isolated. There's so much to see in Australia. There's so many places to go and things to do and see. And because, we have a lot of expat friends, everyone's in the same boat. As in, they're our families now. So our expat friends are our families. So we spend Christmases together, and sometimes there's maybe 20 people, because of the fact that we don't have family. So we all just get together and just have a big party. So yeah, the future, I think, would be part in Australia, mainly in Australia, and then part in the UK. Okay. I think that's the future for me.
Okay, I hear you. And you're happy to be back in England for now?
Yes, I'm actually here just for 10 days, and then on my own, and then we fly, then we're coming back with the kids in July for 5 weeks.
You spoke about there's lots of things to do. What kind of things? So I know you've got your tourism, you've got your Ayers Rock.
Yeah, so especially like if you're in Sydney, there's loads of things to do. So obviously the Opera House, we go to the ballet quite a lot and go and see the orchestra, and it's so easy to go to. So from where I am from here, you have to get the train up to London, which is probably about an hour and 10 minutes. Then you've got to get the tube to wherever you want to go to. Whereas where we live on the northern beaches in Sydney, you can just literally get the ferry over and you can just walk straight to the Opera House. So everything's quite easily accessible where we live. So you can get culture, or you can go clubs, or you can have, the restaurants are amazing. The food is outstanding. Mm-hmm. So we've got some beautiful restaurants and literally on our doorstep.
Are you into any outdoor sports like surfing, snorkeling?
I'm English. I don't swim very well, so no, definitely not surfing. But we do loads of paddleboarding.
Paddleboarding. That's when you stand
Supboarding, yeah, stand-up paddleboarding.
Yeah, you stand up with a paddle.
Yeah,
okay.
Or you sit down if you fall off or whatever.
And you do that in the sea?
Yes.
What about the sharks?
Yeah. Do you know what's so funny? What about the sharks? So no one really thinks about the sharks when you're in Australia. No one really thinks about the spiders. So at the bottom of our garden, there's a red-bellied black snake, which is really dangerous. It's a really dangerous snake. No one really thinks about it. There's the Sydney funnel web that's under your grass. No one thinks about it.
What's a funnel web?
Funnel web. It's a really dangerous spider. It basically, if it puts its claws into you, you probably die unless you have the antivenom. But no one really thinks about the sharks.
Okay.
So you just kind of, I mean, and locally, Bronte to us, someone died. An English guy died actually recently. But you don't. It's
what,
just
he got eaten by a shark?
Literally got eaten by the shark.
Or was it a great white?
It was a I don't know what it was actually. I don't know what it was.
So you've never
But
seen
he literally got eaten whole by the shark.
You've never seen a shark when you're swimming, paddleboarding?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Thankfully. Although having said that, we were in Byron and we were with friends, and they were on the beach. We were actually at the campsite, and there was a shark, and they had to all they saw the fin, and
Someone, shark!
someone, shark, get out,
Shark!
get out.
Shark!
So no, I don't know. We don't. It's one of those things you just don't really. You do think about it, but you don't think about it.
Okay, so even when it comes to your kids in the water, you don't worry,
No.
you don't.
No.
Okay, I'm not making you. I hope
No,
I'm not
I know.
making you seem like a bad man.
No,
No,
nothing's-
you can go.
Yeah,
Go on,
just go.
kids.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
But no, but often, it's just more about. So there's this place called Seal Rocks, which is stunning, and you drive around this corner, and it's just got this. We call it Diamond Beach. It's not a diamond beach at all. It's just, it sparkles, and it's beautiful. And every time you go there, the boys will. My husband surfs, my son surfs, and they'll be surfing with dolphins, just jumping over them.
Oh, is it?
It's pretty.
But mind you, dolphins protect them from the sharks.
They do that. Yeah, that's right. And there's always dolphins there, so it's pretty amazing.
That's funny that a dolphin can take on a shark. But mind you, I suppose there's quite many numbers of dolphins.
Well, that's right. But I think that when the shark, so often the sharks will eat someone that's in a wetsuit because they think it's a seal. So that's why.
So if you're going to wear a wetsuit, you want to wear a white one.
Yeah.
Or one
Well,
with pink
you'd
spots.
look a bit weird. But
No,
yeah.
it doesn't matter. I'd rather
You'd
look
be
weird
live.
than missing a leg.
But you
or
just
an arm.
don't. So basically, you just don't go at dawn or dusk because that's when the sharks are out.
And they feed.
Dawn or dusk.
Yeah, yeah.
That's when they feed. And so if a lot of people will spearfish, and then there's the blood that comes from obviously the fish they've killed. Excuse me. And so the sharks can smell the blood.
Yeah, they can smell it from 100 kilometres away.
They can, yeah,
Imagine
correct.
that.
Yeah, I know. That's
That's
insane,
phenomenal, isn't it? Yeah,
I know, they're pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But there's. So everyone's like, oh, shark nets, we need to get rid of the sharks, kill the sharks. Well, no, hang on a second. He was in the sea before us, the sharks. It's their home. It's just.
But you wouldn't kill them off because they'd go other places and come back with a vengeance.
Well, that's right. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
But it's been great talking to you.
Thank you. It's been.
We appreciate the journey.
Yeah, and thank you for
And
the Uber ride. It's been great.
Okay. If you had to share a gift from your life experience and that you give with the world, share to the world, what would that be?
Well, this is just going to sound really tacky, but it's what I always say to my kids: just treat everyone with kindness. That would be my resounding
Okay. Well, that's
thing I impart to the kids: is just treat everyone with kindness, and don't just if someone's in a bad mood that day, you have no idea what's going on in the back of their heads.
Yeah.
So you just be respectful.
I hear that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot for that, and we wish you well.
Thank you.
And to our listeners out there, do not forget to check our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories, where we interview people from around the world who've invested in Africa, so you can hear what it's really like to invest your money where the continent with 33% of the world's known natural resources. Apart from that, have a nice day. We hope that episode enhanced your life. We post an interview every day as well as vlogging on our social media channels. Don't forget to subscribe to get our latest episode.